Welcome to the We Are VIP podcast. Each week, your host, Casey Hasten, Director of Recruiting at VIP, will bring you valuable insights from thought leaders, introduce you to incredible companies, and bring you tips for landing your dream job from our team of executive recruiters at VIP. And now, Casey Hasten.
Welcome to the We Are VIP podcast, a podcast devoted to adding value to your career or candidate search, brought to you by VIP. I'm your host, Casey Hasten. I'm an executive recruiter, director of recruiting with VIP, and your all-around hiring guru. But I don't just hire people. I actually want to make sure people are in the right career, that they're not misaligned, so that they enjoy getting up and they say, thank God it's Monday, instead of, oh my God, here we go again. And I do that by bringing thought leaders and amazing people to just share their wisdom and help collapse that timeline to success for you. So today, I have a real treat for you. So I'd like to welcome Alan West, former chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, distinguished conservative thought leader, highly decorated military veteran, and author. So before Alan became a congressman, he dedicated 22 years in the United States Army, and Lieutenant Colonel West served in several combat zones and received many, many honors. In November of 2010, he was elected to the United States Congress representing Florida's 22nd District. But today, he is here to share his wisdom with us. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks so very much for having me on, Casey.
I had heard of you from afar. I'd seen pictures of you. I know that you have been and still are a supporter of Success North Dallas that I took over from Bill Wallace a couple of years ago. And it was my absolute honor to finally get to meet you in person. I don't know, about 6 months ago? Does that sound right?
Yeah, it was about February, if I'm correct, and it was a pleasure to meet you and continue to support to Success North Dallas and Bill Wallace. When I was in Congress, I served on the Small Business Committee, and without a doubt, the business entrepreneurial spirit is what fuels the economy here in the United States of America. So always a pleasure to be with small business entrepreneurs.
Yeah, absolutely. And at Success North Dallas, that's part of our mission, is not just to support entrepreneurs, but the small business owners and the small business leaders that are part of the community that are really trying to make a difference in the world. And so we absolutely appreciate your support in that regard.
You got it. And again, when you think about what makes this country grow and what, so many people have come to this country to be a part of, is that ability to say, I have a thought, I have an idea, I want to create a business. And here in the United States of America, with the free market enterprise system that we have, you can start out having a lemonade stand as a kid, and next thing you know, you have an incredible beverage company later on in life.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that you bring that up, because I have started several business throughout my career. And I've just launched, and I'm just like, oh, let me go get another LLC for that idea,
Yeah.
And so, but then comes tax time and I'm like, I got to file returns on all these LLCs. That's not fun.
No, it's not fun. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people, having served up there in Congress, they don't realize, because most of those folks have never signed the front side of a check. They've only signed the back side of the check. And too many of them have spent their entire lives and careers being up there in Washington, D.C., and they're completely displaced from the things, the challenges, the obstacles that people face. And I remember a hearing that we had back when I was on the Small Business Committee. And, we were seeing this guy, he was the czar of regulations, Cass Sunstein. And, the Obama administration was just increasing regulations on small business owners. And I asked this guy, how do you think that increasing regulations helps our economy? Well, he said, well, the thing is that you have to hire more people to make sure that folks are keeping up with the regulations. And I'm thinking, okay, so what you're saying is that government hires more people to regulate folks in the private sector, and that's supposed to help the economy, when the people in the private sector are the ones that are giving up their money, their largesse, to be able to pay for all of these regulators. It's a very insane thought. And when you look at this whole argument about a living wage, once upon a time when I was a kid, back in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia, I couldn't wait for summertime to come around and get that little minimum wage job, $3.25, and save up my money so I could, take my little girlfriend to a movie, or, go out and have some fun with my friends. But now all of a sudden, when you start talking about 15, 20, $25 minimum wage, look at what is happening to a lot of our small businesses. Look at the fact that Red Lobster is having to shut down and file for bankruptcy because guess what? The margins for so many of these small businesses are tight. And when you start looking at forcing people to raise their wages, then guess what ends up happening? They either going to have to raise the price of the commodity that they're selling. They're going to have to let people go. And that's why you see this upside down economy that we have right now.
I was just listening to some news on the way into the studio today, and they were talking about Bed Bath and Beyond is closing. What was another big one that's closing that shut down the rest? The Christmas tree store was one of them that's closing. And so I think you're right. And I feel like we are here in Texas shielded from a lot of that just because Texas is so pro-business, at least from what I've seen. And again, maybe I'm still very sheltered, but I think it's probably more pro-business than some other states might be. But we still have the regulations. Like I said, I still have several businesses that I love the idea that started them. I just hate having to do the paperwork,
Yeah. Well, Texas, without a doubt, and, places like Florida and Georgia, where I was born and raised, they do have more of a pro-business atmosphere. And that's why you see a lot of corporations and businesses moving there. But remember, it was 4 years ago when all of a sudden, even here in Dallas, Texas, where we were told that businesses had to shut down. And I have looked through the United States Constitution, the Texas State Constitution. I have not seen anywhere where government can tell a private sector business that they have to shut down. You try to provide the right type of guidance so that people can protect their clients, they can protect their workers and employees. But to tell folks that their livelihood, their way of life has to completely come to an end. And oh, by the way, you don't tell them they don't have to pay taxes anymore. And, the whole, paying people checks and things of this nature, the PPP, well, guess what? That still comes from taxpayers because the government does not generate any resources or wealth. They take resources and wealth from others. And so it's so interesting, Casey, that when you see what happened 4 years ago, then all of a sudden, when we look at the fiscal irresponsibility by which many of our government officials are running the ship, I mean, we're talking about over 30 something trillion dollars in debt for the United States of America. If all of a sudden, what would happen if the private sector turned to the public sector, the federal government, and says, maybe we need to put some regulations on you. Maybe we need to talk about how you can better, balance your balance sheet and your profit and loss. Let's look at this thing. How is it that the Department of Defense has never passed an audit at all, but yet it continues to operate and continues to spend not in the positive, but in the negative. And then every year they just ask for more money. Why don't we have zero-based budgeting in the federal government like I have to do in my business? Instead of you guys operate on this baseline budget where every single budget cycle, you just increase the amount that you're going to spend. So I think it's time for small business entrepreneurs and the private sector to start asking these questions of the elected officials up there because they operate based upon the money, the largesse, as you just talked about, that is being sent to them.
I think that is such a valid statement, and not to get too political here, but I do think that there were definitely should be some questions raised about why some businesses were made to shut down and other businesses were allowed to continue to operate. And that's probably a whole nother podcast, but I don't disagree with that. I think that there was, I don't know. I just think that there was a lot of fluidity in the decisions that were being made with who was essential and who wasn't. I've talked to several of my clients that were told that they were essential, and I'm like, but why are you essential, but this client B over here wasn't, and they had to shut down?
Yeah, who gets the right to make that decision? There's a great quote from Benjamin Franklin, and he said, "Those who would surrender essential liberty for temporary security, in the end, deserve neither liberty nor security." So how does someone make the decision that this store gets to stay open, that store does not? This restaurant maybe can stay open, but this restaurant has to shut down. We don't want to see people picking winners and losers. And this is not about being political, because the fiscal house that we have here in the United States of America is the responsibility of folks from both political parties. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I would challenge your readers, I mean, your viewers, to go back, and you can look this up. Look up and see what the debt of the United States of America was in your birth year. I can
Ooh.
tell you, in my birth year in 1961, the debt of the United States of America was about $464 billion. Now, I'm 63 years of age. So in 63 years, we have gone from 464 billion to over 30 trillion. And that affects our future, because no one can operate with that level of debt. No one can operate when you have a debt to GDP ratio, which means that you are owing more than you are producing, that is upside down. And that's a big concern that we have to have here in the United States of America.
Well, and I appreciate that you are bringing that to light in a way that we can really understand it, because I think that's the problem. A lot of people don't dig in it, and I'll raise my hand. I'm one of them. I know enough to get me in trouble when it comes to the government, and enough to just make me mad, but not really enough to know what to do about it. And
Yeah.
voting, absolutely, I think is critical. But then you also have to know who you're voting for. When in this last election cycle, I paid a little bit more attention, and I'm not talking about the big one. I'm talking about the, small local elections, because those impact me directly.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah, and that's something that a lot of people don't do. I mean, you can travel around and look, everyone can tell you who's running for president. Most people can tell you who's running for senator or maybe governor. But most folks cannot tell you who their school board members are. They can't tell you who their city council members are. And those are the levels of governance that touch you the closest, especially it touches your children. Or people can't tell you who the county commissioners are. And these are people that are making huge decisions as far as the operations of a county like Dallas County, which is the eighth or ninth largest county metroplex in the country. So, the founding fathers said that, this constitutional republic that we live in is only going to be successful. It only works if you have an informed and educated electorate. And I think that in many ways, the apathy and the complacency that we have within the electorate really does hurt us. And I give you a great case in point. The first Tuesday in May of this month were the municipal level elections here across Dallas County. Now, the city of Dallas is one of the largest cities in the United States of America. You only had 40,000 people that voted in the municipal elections in Dallas, 40,000 out of millions. It was a 4% turnout rate. And another thing that happened were many ballot propositions. I believe there were 10. I live in Garland, so I could not vote on the Dallas propositions. But those propositions all passed because people were pushing it from the Dallas City Council. And a lot of people don't realize how that's going to affect them and their tax rates and things of that nature. So we have to have people that are a lot more savvy, a lot more engaged. And I think our founding fathers, they wanted us to have citizen servants, citizen legislators, people that came from all varied walks of life, from the business sector, from, the medical field, from the military, not just one certain group of individuals. And it tends to be lawyers right now. And so lots of times, Casey, they write things in such convoluted language that you're right. Most people just turn it off and say, I don't get it. I don't understand it. And I don't want to be bothered.
Now, I will tell you, and this may not be the right way to do it, but if I am, voting and there are propositions I don't know what they stand for, I don't vote either way. Just because I'll vote for everything that I have knowledge about, but I'm not going to vote for just say yes or no just because it's on the paper when I don't know what the proposition's for.
Well, it's my favorite rock band is a group called Rush,
I love
and
Rush.
they had this. And they had the song "Free Will."
Yeah.
And the refrain to Free Will says, "If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice." And I think that's something that we have to be so careful of. So, that's why it's a huge responsibility. But I take that responsibility because that's what leadership is, and you know that as well. We've got to do what is necessary to be that conduit of information.
Yes.
So I try to do that through the podcast that I have, Steadfast and Loyal. I try to do that every time I go out and speak to individuals. And I try to be a trusted confidant to the American people and to the people here in Texas and to the people here in Dallas County, in my local neighborhood here in Garland, because people just want to live their lives. You know that. People just want to believe that, hey, they've got my best interests at heart. But I think 4 years ago, a lot of folks had their world turned upside down, Casey, when all of a sudden they're like, I'm healthy, I'm strong, I feel great. Why can't I go outside my house?
Yeah.
What do you mean you're going to arrest me if I walk up the street and take my little boy or little girl to the playground? I mean, we're outside. I mean, don't you want us to exercise? So I think you're starting to see more people awaken and question things a little bit more. And I think that's healthy for us living in a representative democracy.
I could not agree more, and I am glad that people are starting to question what they've been taught their entire life and say, oh, maybe there is another side to this story, and maybe we need to look at alternatives to. Just because we've always done something in the past doesn't mean we need to continue doing the same thing. The exact definition of insanity, right?
Insanity. Yep.
Yeah.
Albert Einstein.
Yes.
And I think it's important, you coming from that, marketing and coaching and recruiting side of the house. We need to go do a good job of recruiting people from the private sector to get involved with sitting down and writing these propositions and running for local elected office, especially to bring that different perspective when you start to look at these multi-million billion-dollar budgets that you see for our cities and for our counties and for our states and for our nation. We need to have people that have worked on budgets before and understand how to balance a budget and understand, well, we really don't need to do this. And so this is something we can cut out of the budget. There was a great movie, I think it was called Dave. And it was the guy who ended up replacing the president because he looked like the president. I think it was Kevin Kline. And Kevin Kline decided that he was going to go through the budget of the United States of America. He got his friend who was a CPA, Charles Grodin. It's a great movie, Dave.
I'm gonna
And
have
they
to look it
sat
up.
down one night. Yeah, you should look it up. And they sat down one night and they were going through the budget. And Dave said, man, I would be in jail if I were to present a budget like this. And the next day at a staff meeting, he went line by line with all the different cabinet secretaries and said, why do we have this program? How do you explain this program? And I think it's time that we get the common sense, the everyday American citizen that starts to look at these things, open up the hood and give the old government a little tune up and just say, this is not making any sense. And that's why the engine is not running very well. So I think it's time we start looking for some new mechanics. And I think that that's one of the great things that you do with your podcast is to enlighten people and to, maybe encourage more people to say, okay, you've got experience here. Let's make sure you have experience on the other side of the street as well, because the people on the other side of the street in the public sector, they're the ones writing the rules, laws, regulations, and edicts and mandates, which you're not supposed to do, that affect our lives.
Well, and I think that's very true. And I think that I've taken a very different approach to this podcast because, this is our company podcast. It is about helping people in their careers, but I don't want to just talk about the 9 to 5 part of your career because that's not where your career ends. It needs to be integrated into your entire life. And so I like to talk about topics that are going to impact careers like, meal planning. That can be huge because so many people don't eat healthy and, and all the fast food and I'll raise my hand again and that's why I brought that on. It was because it was a topic I needed to know more about. And so I wanted, if you meal plan, if you do those healthy meals, then it takes the guesswork out when you get home at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night and you don't feel like cooking. You just pop out a meal you've already prepared, right? And it helps you make better choices, which is, I think, all you're saying. Let's make better choices.
Yeah, let's make better choices. And I think that when you look at the health of a nation, it's economic health. You want to make sure that you're eating healthy. And look, I'm all about, being healthy. Every now and then I like to have my Five Guys, 2 patties with cheese, mustard ketchup only. But, 5 times out of the week, and I'm 63, 5 times out of the week, I still get up and knock out anywhere from 3 up to 5 miles.
Wow.
The weather is nice now, so I can get out in my pool and swim some laps because I know that my health care is my responsibility. First and foremost, I'm the first line of defense. And back in 2016, I got diagnosed to have to get a pacemaker because everyone thought that I was super healthy, and that's why my heart rate was so low. But actually, it was bradycardia, and it was this thing called sick sinus syndrome, where the sinus node was not sending the signal to my heart to beat. And so at night, my heart rate was dropping down into the 20s. No real fault of me not being healthy. It was just one of those things. So I think it's important that we take care of ourselves and we not cede over decisions about our bodies and our children and our households to others. Like I say again, I think that we have to be that first line of defense. It's just the same as when you're running a company or a corporation. I mean, you want to make sure that you have the right type of guidance. You want to make sure that you have the right type of task and purpose that goes out. You want to make sure that everyone understands your vision for that company because you want to have a healthy company. So, what are the things that go into having a healthy company? Well, first and foremost, good, strong, healthy, informed, and productive employees. That's important. And I saw that in the military. I mean, serving 22 years in the military, what was the mission that I had was to prepare soldiers to go to combat. Uh, a tough thing to do, but that's what the country called on me to do. And, I had to do it a few times in my life, so to deploy young men into combat. But the most important thing was to prepare them and train them to be able to go over there and to survive and to sustain themselves and come back home safe.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about your journey because I really feel like the and my son served. He was in the Air
Yes.
Force.
He was smarter than me. He had a 5-star hotel, air conditioning, everything. I
Let
had
me
a
tell you
tent.
something. Yeah, exactly, exactly. And the first time when he graduated from boot camp, and because he graduated from San Antonio, which is a joint base down at
Yeah.
I think it's Lackland.
Lackland. Yeah.
Yeah, and there were some Army guys there, and I mean, I'm proud mom. My son just graduated from boot camp, and they're like, "Yeah,
Hmm.
we hear you graduated from the chair force," and I was like,
That's
no, you didn't. But then, as he's taking the bus to I think he went to Georgia maybe for his next training, and he
uh-huh.
was like, "Oh, mom, the Wi-Fi's not working on the bus," and I'm like, "You've got to be kidding
I'm telling
me."
you. I'm telling you. Look, it's night and day, man. And God love him because I was a paratrooper and I spent many a time, on the back of a C-130 or a C-141 or C-17 aircraft. Uh, we fight together. That's the key
Absolutely.
thing. Soldier, sailor, airman, marine, whatever. But it is funny, man, because the Air Force they like their good living, and they will tell you that in a heartbeat. You ask them to live in a tent, they're like, why?
I'm going to go fly the 30 million or however much it costs jet instead. So,
Yeah.
no, it was really, but I think that even though, I mean, different branches, I think all branches are
Hmm.
important.
Yes.
There was so much discipline that he learned in the military that I could not have taught him. And I think that was so very important. So, how do you feel like your military journey impacted you?
Oh, it made me the person that I am. There's no doubt about it. And, folks always ask me, why did you decide to join the military? Well, my father, who was a World War II veteran, he was a corporal in the United States Army, and he sat me down, and I was 15 years of age, and he challenged me to be the first officer in our family because he was enlisted. My older brother was enlisted. He was a Marine, fought in Vietnam. Everyone has a black sheep in the family. Everybody else was
Hey,
Army,
my
except
dad
my
was a Marine, sir.
See, that's because of the pretty uniforms. That's what I told my older brother. You just want a prettier uniform. But Dad challenged me in 1976 to be the first officer. So I joined high school, junior ROTC Army, and after graduating, went on to the University of Tennessee and earned my commission on 31 July 1982 and retired in 2004. So, the discipline, the ability to make tough decisions in tough conditions. That's what it gave me. And, to find out that I always tell folks, I think there are 3 C's in the letter C to being a good leader. And that is courage, is competence, is commitment, is conviction, and is character. And I think that that's what we should sit back and we should look for those five qualities in people that say they want to be in leadership positions in our lives, in our
Mm.
communities, in wherever walk of life that we have, in our private sector businesses and what have you. Because as I said, no one follows a coward into battle. No one follows a dummy into battle. No one follows someone that's not committed to victory and success or convicted to see that into battle. And no one wants to follow a liar in the
Mm.
battle. So character, honor, and integrity is very important. So I think that those are the type of things that I learned. And it was very tough, being in Washington, D.C. in Congress, where I thought that, everybody felt that way. I mean, they took an oath to support and defend the Constitution, which I had taken as a 21-year-old second lieutenant in 1982. But not everyone sees it that way. It is not about the interests of the country. It ends up being about self-interest. It ends up being about special interests. And I think that that's where we see problems in our country. And that's Republican and Democrat. You understand that I call a ball, and a strike, no matter what. So I think it's important that we get back to evaluating people based upon those five C's of leadership and wanting to make sure that we have the best possible leaders in any walk of life, in any area of life in which we find ourselves. Because therefore, then you can do as George Orwell said, a nation sleeps peacefully at night because rough men stand ready to do violence on their behalf. I think Americans want to sleep peacefully at night knowing that people are going to do what's right by them and not by anyone else. And we've got to restore that in some way. So, we had this thing in the military that you don't go home till the mission's complete. It was very frustrating to be in Congress, and all of a sudden people say, "Okay, it's time to go home, recess," and I'm like, "Well, recess is for kids. We got work to do, and so why aren't we staying here and doing the work? It'll be here when we get back." That's not what American people expect of us, and so that level of commitment and discipline, it was kind of disappointing that I didn't see that in Washington D.C.
Maybe it should be a rule to serve in government that you have to have served in the military first.
Oh shoot, you you just threw a you don't know what into the punch bowl. Uh, Look, I mean, I've heard so many people say, if you're going to be commander in chief, you should have served in uniform. And when you go back, Casey, and you look at the history of the United States of America, most of the early presidents, they had served in uniform or something along those lines, and people would laugh you out of the building if you came up and just popped up and said, I just want to be president. Well, what have you done? How have you served this country in tough situations? So would that ever happen? That would take like a constitutional amendment, but I think that we should just do better as a people and demand more of the folks that we are asking to go and be our representatives, to be our voice in whatever hall there is. Like I said, from City Hall all the way up to the White House. But I will tell you that about 45, 50 years ago, there were some 70 to 73% of members of the United States House of Representatives and the United States Senate that had served in uniform. And today that number is down to about 18 or 19%. And I think it does make a difference.
Wow, that is an incredible statistic. That incredible. So I know you've written several books, and I
Yeah.
believe your most recent.
Coloring books. Real
I
funny.
don't think so. I think they're get a little bit more meat than that. But I believe the most recent one is Guardian of the Republic. Is that correct?
Well, Guardian of the Republic was the first one. The
Okay.
second book was Hold Texas, Hold the Nation, and the third book was We Can Overcome. So, yeah,
Okay.
Guardian of the Republic was the first one that I wrote back 2014 or so, and it's kind of a biographical understanding of what made me and telling a story about my parents and my time in the military and kind of what shaped me as far as my philosophies and beliefs about this country.
And the other two?
Hold Texas, Hold the Nation was really about looking at the success behind Texas, this economic engine that we have here, the, I think, eighth or ninth largest economy in the world, and what differentiates it from especially California, and why you see so many of these businesses and corporations fleeing some of these other states and coming here to Texas because of that business atmosphere that we have. But we got to make sure that everyone that is coming to Texas understands why they're coming here, and what creates this positive business atmosphere and environment.
Mm-hmm.
Because the last thing I want to see is people that come here from other states and they decide that they're going to vote like they were in the state that they left. And I think it's important as corporate leaders to explain that to their employees when they're picking up and moving from one place to another, to let them know why they're doing it, and what has forced them to do that, and how they want to make sure they continue to have that good, strong business climate and atmosphere.
I agree. And one of the organizations that partners with Success North Dallas is a company called Y Texas. Have you heard of them?
Hmm.
Ed Curtis?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And he's been very instrumental, to my understanding, in helping, lay some of that earlier groundwork for Texas being so pro-business. And now he's working with those companies, but doing exactly what you're talking about to explain, this is why we have this here. This is why you want to come here,
Yeah.
In other words,
And,
don't
and I
mess it up.
and I think that's important. Communication is very important for a leader. I remember, being a battalion commander. You got 500-600 troops, and someone once asked me, "Who's the most important soldier in your unit?" And I said, "The newest soldier." And so it's important for corporate leaders or any leader to be able to, convey their vision and convey their thoughts to the newest employee that you have, because you want that atmosphere. You want people to understand, why are you making the decisions that you're making. You don't want, we used to call them the barracks lawyers, the guys that would stir up trouble in your unit. You don't want the barracks lawyers to be the ones that are really undermining the success of your organization. You want to get out there and get in front of things, and you want people to
Yes.
understand, this is why I just had to make this decision about, hours that people are going to work, or this is why I had to make a decision about X. This is why these regulations or these policies are affecting me, and this is why I have to do X, Y, and Z, so that people can understand and see the connection between, regulation and policies and the atmosphere that they have in their work climate, in their work environment. So I think one of the critical things that you have to have is an effective communicator as a leader, that is written and oral communications. And they got to get out there. When I was in combat, I didn't sit back in the CP, the command post. I was out there with my troops, hooking and jabbing. And if they saw, the old man, as they would call me, out there getting into a firefight, out there in the middle of the night, on a patrol, working with them, what? It inspired them. So I think it's very important for leaders to take that position. What was that show, Undercover Boss? I thought it was a
Yes.
great show
Yes.
for the guy to come down out of the C-suite and get down there with the everyday men and women and see what they're going through and understand what they're going through, because that's going to help you make the right decisions that are up there, when you go back up into the C-suite.
I could not agree more. And I just, I love everything that you've said today, and that you obviously love this country. You put
Yeah.
your heart into, doing the best and helping make the best decisions that you can. And we not only appreciate your service and thank you for your service in the military, we thank you for your continued service to continue to fight for all of us that don't know any better.
Well, that's what it's all about. It is, we just went through Memorial Day, and Memorial Day is all about people laying down their lives for others. And so if I could just do a little something to give of myself and my life to sacrifice so that we can have a better America and a better Texas and a better Dallas County for our children and grandchildren, then I will be very happy when my final duty station calls me.
That is so amazing. All right, I'm going to ask you one of our VIP questions today, because
Okay.
I feel like we're probably running a little over on time, which is awesome. I love this conversation. But I think that this question, I think, will interest a lot of our audience, a lot of our listeners. And you've been very successful in your career. And you've had multiple careers. So what is one thing you do each morning to set your day up for success?
It's my Bible devotional time. I have a God's devotional for men, and I read that because I think that I can get out and run every morning, and that helps my my physical fitness, but my spiritual fitness is very important. So I will tell everyone out there to take some time to be with the Lord and ask Him to lead you and to guide you, to give you the strength and the courage, and to do as Solomon asked of the Lord, to give him the wisdom and discernment to be a good leader. And I think that's so important.
I couldn't agree more. How do people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Sure. Well, I'm on all the social media platforms out there except for TikTok because I don't want to hang out with the Chinese Communist Party. Sorry I had to say that, but I have a podcast also called Steadfast and Loyal. And so you can check out that podcast. It's on YouTube, Rumble, several other outlets. And I'm also the executive director for the American Constitutional Rights Union. It's been around for about 30 years. And so I try to use my voice and my platform to ensure that we safeguard your constitutional rights, freedoms, and liberties.
I love it. What are your handles on the socials?
At Alan West, and the other is theacru.org. And like I said, you can just type in Steadfast and Loyal Podcast.
Awesome. Awesome. This has been so much fun. I appreciate you so much saying yes and being open to being a guest on our show today. I think what you have to share is so invaluable. And I just have one last thing to say to you.
Uh-oh.
You are a VIP.
No. Nah, look, I have been on battlefields with VIPs. I've been on battlefields with heroes. And that's been the greatest honor of my life, to have been with young men and young women like your son that were willing to make the last full measure of devotion for this great nation. So they're the real VIPs, not me.
And that's a wrap for today. Join us next week here on the We Are VIP podcast. We'd love to know how we can help you be a VIP. To find out more, log on to wearevip.com.